Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News, and I'm Faisal Rehman, live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about this Afghan peace deal. Primarily, as we all know, that despite all odds, despite all hiccups and near misses, now it appears that the deal between the Afghan Taliban and the American government is almost finally on the horizon. Now, the interesting part is that the Taliban, they have said that the overall, rather let me use this word, aggression or the attacks by the Afghan Taliban, that will be reduced during the next few days, rather 7 days. And then, if this is a successful measure, then there is going to be a meeting held on the 29th, and a longer peace deal might be on the table. So this is something pretty amazing. After a very long time now, the Americans, they have finally realized the importance of the Taliban, and they have accepted them as a party now. But at the same time, I think the most important part is that the Afghan government, they need to put their own house in order first. Still, the tussle is going on between Abdullah and the current president. Abdullah has not accepted the result of the previous election. So, if that is the case, things can go out of hands also. But before I introduce you to our panelists, we have prepared a package. After the package, we'll introduce you to our guest, and then we'll start our program.
The United States and the Taliban started the clock early Saturday with 7 days of greatly reduced violence in Afghanistan. Start of a plan to end America's war in Afghanistan. Both sides will meet on 29th February to sign an agreement on timetable for the withdrawal of US troops if the week-long truce holds. Donald Trump said on Sunday he is ready to sign a peace deal with the Taliban in Afghanistan if a temporary truce holds in America's longest war.
Time to come home, and they want to stop. You know, they've been fighting a long time. They're tough people, we're tough people, but after 19 years, that's a long time.
Sirajuddin Haqqani, the deputy leader of Afghan Taliban, is also optimistic about recent developments. He wrote in his opinion piece for New York Times, "We are about to sign an agreement with the United States, and we are fully committed to carrying out its every single provision in letter and spirit. Achieving the potential of the agreement, ensuring its success, and earning lasting peace will depend on an equally scrupulous observance by the United States of each of its commitments. Can we have complete trust and lay the foundation for cooperation or even a partnership in the future?" On the other side, the Afghan government is deep in a political crisis after a bitterly disputed presidential election in which the opposition candidate claimed victory despite President Ashraf Ghani having been declared the winner. However, any peace deal between the US and the Taliban would transform the Afghan equation considerably and hopefully pave the way for an intra-Afghan dialogue.
Now, we have with us in our studio, let me introduce you to our panelists. We have with us Dr. Professor Rifat Hussain Saab. As we all know that he needs no introduction. He's a senior strategic analyst, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
We also have with us Air Vice Marshal retired Faisal Saab. Faisal Saab is also a senior analyst and the former Vice Chancellor of Air University, Islamabad. Thank you very much, sir. And we also have with us in our studio Ambassador Shahid M.G. Kyani Saab, former senior diplomat, sir. Thank you very much. Now, as we all know and we heard that currently this Afghan peace process is once again initiated. Now, sir, the most important part, which I believe, is there is a lot of problem going on. After reading the letter which was written by the Taliban, and that was printed in the New York Times also, sir. Now, what I've understood, that the Afghan Taliban, they are very much ready for the peace deal. So the case is with the American government, Dr. Saab. But how do you see this aspect of 7 days peace deal, and then they'll see if it is working out well, they can go for a longer truce, and eventually things would be sorted out. Do you think this is the right formula? Are you optimistic about it?
Well, I must say that I'm very optimistic in the sense that this is a step in the right direction. both the Americans and the Taliban have been fighting with each other for the last 19 years to no end, and there is a realization on the part of both parties that there is no military solution to the Afghan conflict, and they have to sit across a table and they have to negotiate with each other. Something that the Taliban have done for the last year and a half. The 9 rounds of talks that were held in Doha, which produced this agreement, and the comprehensive peace agreement. Of the details I have not seen yet, because it is being held close to their chest, but there are certain trickle down reports, there are leaked reports which I have seen, and based on that there is a 49-page document which highlights the key
important elements of the deal.
and one of the key elements of the deal is that the Taliban and the Ghani government will agree as part of the guarantor process that they will have a smaller group of interministerial committee. I do not know which countries will be represented there, but that's the idea, and they will oversee the implementation of this peace deal, which will be cut between the Taliban and the ISAF forces. The second most important aspect of this deal is there is going to be an 18-month transition period spread over a period of 3 phases, and the first phase will be will involve the signing of the peace deal, and 10 days later there are going to be intra-Afghan dialogue, and as a result of that dialogue, then the full-fledged peace agreement will be observed by both sides. And also, as the speculation goes, there has been a secret part to this agreement, is that the Americans will not withdraw their forces altogether. They will front load their withdrawal only up to 6,800 soldiers during the first phase, and then they will see how the.
So the remaining around 4,500 would still be there.
And the Americans have committed themselves to remaining engaged with the Afghan government only in the civilian context, which means there will be
no military,
no combat military role will be there for the American
What about
troops.
the drones and their bases?
Well, that's part of
practically what we have seen recently, sir, that their military is not involved much on the ground. The basic formula is a drone. They pinpoint the place.
But when you say reduction in violence, for which they have, which came into effect only a couple of days ago, which will continue till February 29th. If the definition of the reduction in violence is that there has to be cessation of violence by both sides against each other's military forces, there will be no military targets will be hit, no mass casualty civilian attacks will take place. So, which essentially means that both sides during this transition period will retain their right to engage in self-defense. So, these are some of the elements which give me some hope that the peace deal, but I must say that the Americans have finally come to realization that it's time for them to withdraw, and there is a domestic context, there is a
international context,
international context, and the Americans are essentially saying they want to go to their President Trump actually wants to go to his voters, and he wants to claim that he has delivered on his promise, which was made at the time of his first election, that that the American boys are coming home. Now, how long will it take? There can be many a slip between the cup and the lip, and that is something which remains to be seen, and that means that Pakistan's foreign minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi had also drawn attention that there are internal spoilers and there are going to be external spoilers. So, whether a mechanism can be devised whereby the spoilers role by these internal elements as well as external elements can be contained.
Absolutely,
that is something which makes this peace deal look very, very fragile.
Even Faisal, now there are 2 important points here. One is about the probability, looking at the reality on the ground, sir. I think it's a great effort by both the sides. And finally, as Faisal mentioned, that the realization is there in the Americans, but primarily a lot of people. I was having a word with one of the Pakistani based in USA, Professor Dr. Saima, and she was in fact of the view that there is hope, but still exactly the same thing, that there are a lot of spoilers, and this is not going to be an easy formula to be followed, sir. First of all, the internal issue between the rivalry between Abdullah and the president, and then, sir, on top now, since Taliban, they are having a very effective role there, sir, and that role should have been there much earlier. So how do you see that aspect, sir? Let's throw light on the internal aspect and the internal aspect as far as the spoilers are concerned. So your take on that.
Let's venture back a bit into history. Afghanistan has been a war-torn country for the past almost 50 years. 40 years with the communist Soviet Union and then the United States, and prior to that there were internal strifes. So the entire society is badly bruised, brutalized, and very prone to picking up guns to anything that they don't like. This war started on 7th October
2001.
2001.
So
It is almost over 18 years now that this war has been going on. And this war will probably go down for long time to come as the longest war that the Americans ever fought.
So I think it is already the longest war.
So then this is going to be a long time unless they start in the stupidity. So this is going to remain the longest war. When you look at the figures, there are over 2,300 US soldiers dead, over 20,000 casualties wounded. On the Afghan side, it is between 0.5 to 1 million people, between 500,000 to 10,000 people who have 10 lakh people who have lost their lives and have been wounded. The entire society is brutalized.
Absolutely.
Every family has lost a near and dear one. When such is the condition where the entire country has suffered so gravely, there's no economy, there's no established formal economy that the Afghans have at the moment. Their drug economy is larger than their formal economy at the moment. So when you have a country which is so much beset and which has been so much unfortunate throughout the last its own recent history, then talking of peace, one should be very cautious, because there have to be sensitivities on both sides. Now, when you look at the Afghan government itself, the recent elections have torn apart the entire fabric of that government that they held back last 4 or 5 years. Now, first of all, it will be very difficult for the Afghan government side to put up a comprehensive team, a unified team that could represent everybody, or majority of people, excuse me, majority of people from Afghanistan. That's one dilemma. Though that dilemma will also remain on the Taliban side, that even Taliban will probably have a very difficult time, though our foreign minister has claimed that they would be preparing a large delegation from the Taliban side to participate, but that's a tall claim, I would say. Looking at the fragility of our relationship with Taliban, I won't probably endorse our foreign minister's statement of being able to conjure up such a big delegation for the discussions after the 29th February. So overall, any move towards a peace process is welcome, is a welcome sign. Is always would be a good thing, because Pakistan, besides Afghanistan, besides the Afghan people, has been the greatest sufferer in this particular war. So anything that goes forward will be welcome. But we must look at that. What role can Pakistan play post 29 February? I think Pakistan's role, Pakistan should be very cautious in claiming any role beyond that.
But sir, Pakistan has already played a very crucial role prior to 29 February.
It has played. It has always been helpful in convincing, it has been trying for a very long time to convince the US government that there is no way out except negotiations. But if you look at the history of war, this particular rapprochement, this particular agreement comes in an election year. Prior to this, the Osama bin Laden's killing was also in an election year.
Indeed, sir.
So election years in the US have been somehow dominating the wars that the American people have fought. They have lost, I mean, in 18 years, it's difficult to believe that the Americans did not have an opportunity of peace prior to this particular one. I can recall at least 2 or 3 moments. First one, the biggest folly they committed was going into Iraq war. Right in 2002, when they had the Taliban's decimated, almost decimated and demotivated and out of their sorts, out of their elements, the Bush government, then Bush government decided to go into Iraq. And they gave a chance to the Taliban to research and come back and again reorganize themselves. Then look at the Obama government's surge between 2009 and 2012. That surge had...
And during that entire period, if you remember, Osama
probably,
bin Laden was eliminated, yes.
Probably that was one moment where the Americans government could have, if they thought so, could have started a negotiation peace process and probably concluded that.
But AVM Saab, we have always been talking about negotiations, and we always said, well, Taliban now practically it seems that they are actually talking or rather negotiating from a position of strength.
Yes, they are.
So do you think now they've been able to in fact engage the Americans and a lot of their demands are being accepted too?
You see the piece in New York Times by Sirajuddin Haqqani, I would view it as a requirement by the Americans for the Haqqanis to commit publicly in support of the peace agreement. And that piece was the public reaffirmation by the Taliban Haqqani group that yes, they are with the peace agreement and they will endorse it. But there's another point in that. If you look at that, Mr. Haqqani wrote that there are notes of dissent within Taliban on this peace agreement. Now, there are 2 ways to look at it.
One way there are differences within their own ranks?
No, the other one is that he is indicating to the Americans, look, there are people who are not tired of fighting war and they're still favoring fighting a war. So don't consider that the Taliban
don't take it as a weakness.
Don't take it as a weakness that Taliban are now tired of war and they're going to just sign up anything. What he indicated them was that there is a sizable group within us that is not in favor of peace deal, and if you don't negotiate on our terms, probably we'll have to come to our own people. So there are a lot of complexities in this peace process.
But still you see hope and light at the end of the tunnel, sir.
I think as long, if I was to look at probably, I would like to connect the FATF with it. Probably postponement of Pakistan's coming out of grey list to June has been to ensure that Pakistan continues to support.
You think that has been linked to this support, sir?
It's so obvious. You see, Afghanistan, which has the largest drug economy in the world, is not on the FATF grey list or black list.
White list.
It's on the white list.
We are on the
grey. So a country that has no financial rules, that is the hub of all the terrorist activity in this particular region.
Primarily, so that declares that white is right, sir. If you have the American support, you can get away with everything and anything.
What I meant was, though we have weaknesses in our financial controls, but they're not as bad as many other countries. So probably postponing it to June is just a diplomatic coercion to make sure that Pakistan continues to work with the Afghan and with the peace deal.
Now, sir, normally whenever March is approaching, end of Feb, so we used to hear this very interesting word, spring offensive. Now, do you think the Americans are scared of that spring offensive? Because that was the time when we would see so much happening within a month or 2, sir, in Afghanistan, so many people losing their lives, bomb explosions, targeting of the VIPs there, and so on and so forth. Now, so there are 2 aspects. First, I want you to answer on that part. And second is, let's say looking at the current scenario in Afghanistan. People are hopeful, yet there are a lot of issues still prevailing there. So recently, we got to know that Arslan was released. Let me use this word, released. Initially, there was some confusion, and later on, the Ministry of Interior, in fact, said, yes, this is what has happened. And at the same time, they said, well, soon you will hear good news. So we heard that Shahryar Massoud was eliminated. And from the, that side, sir, the Waziristan area. And then we got to know that one of the Haqqanis was eliminated. And then somebody was saying that you never know. Next could be Khorasani from the Moment chapter. So TTP's main, I would say, actors were eliminated. Let's you know, because everything is connected in one way or the other.
First of all, let me say to you that two countries in the region are watching this agreement very attentively. One is Iran and Pakistan, because these are the only two countries in the region which has, you know, the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979 and then in 9/11 has impacted negatively on these two countries. The cross-border violations, the killing of the people, especially in Pakistan, the bomb blasts, suicide bombings, all are the result of first the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan and then 9/11. So we're watching them. Pakistan has an advantage over Iran. First is that we had diplomatic relations with the Taliban government. We understand them far better than the Americans and the others. So this is one advantage we have, and that's why the Americans have latched on to us. We understand their psyche, we understand what they want. We may not have the 100% control over the Taliban because they're very independent people, but they understand. The Taliban also understand that, and in this process, since 9/11, Iran established very good relations with Iran, with which they were at loggerheads. They have very good relations with Pakistan because now, as Taliban would sign the agreement and come out, as they say, Professor Saab and the Marshal Saab are right, there are a lot of, you know, if and buts. But it looks like that these 1 week, you know, why they would give them 1 week? Because the Americans also want to understand, are there any other actors other than Taliban? Because if 1 week peace is there, that means the Taliban are in full control of.
There have been certain incidents
Yeah.
which were not claimed by the Taliban,
Yes,
sir. So
absolutely.
that means that, yes.
So this 1 week is to test the Taliban. Are you in full control of the insurgency? If they are, then Taliban are a very important. We have always been saying on this, you know, show that they are a very important actor in a very important stakeholder in the Afghanistan big game. Now, what is going to happen is that are the Taliban ready to talk with the Afghan government? Because the Afghan government is also a problem, which you had said right at the outset.
Indeed, sir.
It's just like the Palestinians, one in the Gaza Strip, another the Bethlehem. They don't talk, and then the adversaries take advantage of it. If the Taliban cannot talk to the Afghan, you know, this government, then what is going to happen? Ultimately, the issue of coexistence will come. The Taliban, very important stakeholder, will have to sit with the Afghan government because Afghanistan has changed since 9/11. It's
Indeed, sir. Absolutely.
It's 19 years. People are enjoying some sort of liberty, even though they are mentally scarred and physically scarred because of this 19 years of war. I've been to Afghanistan. I have seen that civil war brought more devastation than the Soviets occupation, believe it or not. You just come out of Kabul and you see what has happened. So for Pakistan, is extremely important that this peace the agreement brings eternal peace in Afghanistan. Because for us, this the burden of refugees, the cross-border violations, all these things doesn't bode well for us. We are all for supporting them, and the important thing is that our military and the political leadership have been in contact with the government and with the Taliban for the last now many years, and we understand them far better. We cannot, but the one country, I've been very straight say, the Indians are somebody who may rock the boat, but I do not, you know, also want to, let's hope, meaning I'm not sure that maybe the Taliban are also in touch with the Indians. You never know, because they understand the what you call the strength of the Indians of mischief. So they understand what they can do. They may rock the boat because that's not in the interest. But you never know if the Taliban have patched up with Iran, and now they are in very close relationship with China and with Russia.
They have been
So-
contacting their
Yeah,
leaders directly,
absolutely.
sir,
And they have been
and holding
talks.
negotiations there.
So you never know, they are in touch with the Indians. So what, in our opinion, a peace, a long-lasting peace in Afghanistan is very important for the Pakistan security.
Now, Professor Saab, there are 2 points. I mean, whenever we talk about the peace process, there are 2 words again used: Afghan-led, Afghan-owned. Now, so over here, this peace deal, do you believe that this is actually Afghan-owned and Afghan-led, sir?
Well, it has to be. It has to be, because it's not only a phraseology that is important, is because the Americans are counting on an intra-Afghan dialogue which will be between the Afghan parties, contending parties, former enemies, former adversaries who have been fighting long and hard against each other, that they will be able to, which is known as they will be able to forge a national consensus, which will be difficult to achieve. So that's where the hard part of the deal comes in. But the American expectation,
But that is going to be the most important as well.
yeah, and but the American expectation is that once the deal is signed on 29th of February, during the second phase, it will become truly an Afghan-led and Afghan-owned peace process, in which the international community will be interested only in the sense that that there is going to be an Afghanistan support team, which actually is part of the deal, that the Afghan people may invite the international community in the form of Afghanistan support team to buttress the process. But the negotiations and all the commitments, they will be amongst the Afghan people. So in that sense, it's a genuinely and is truly an Afghanistan owned peace process. Now the question is that can the Afghans themselves, can they become the drivers of this peace, and who, if there are any violations from either side of the ceasefire agreement, then who's going to investigate those, and who's going to determine which side has done what. And that's where the danger of the peace spoilers comes in, because you have a lot of armed groups. According to one recent estimate, there are at least 34 armed groups beside the Taliban who are working in different parts, and of course the Jumbo-e Milli group, which is led by the Rashid Dostum, is one of the very, very powerful forces.
Tajik?
The
Uzbek factor.
Uzbek, and then there are people inside the national NDS, which is the Afghan intelligence agency, who do not see eye to eye with Ashraf Ghani's government's desire to cut a deal with the.
But Professor, there's another question here. I mean, Rashid Dostum, the Uzbek factor, he's very close to Abdullah also. Now,
Yes.
do you think, sir, these two can play some negative role? Because Abdullah always had a very dubious character, so do you say, sir? But he's been like that. He's never accepted Pakistan. He's like pretty anti-Pakistan, let me put it this way, sir.
Well, of course, it will depend, to what extent the Americans can persuade Abdullah to not to form a rival government, or not to challenge
The existing government.
not to challenge Kabul's authority. But the interesting part is that when the last elections were held, not the September 2019, but the election the previous one, it was during those elections that guarantees were held out by John Kerry, who was the Secretary
came
of
all
State.
the way,
He
created
came
his
all
post.
the way, and he persuaded Abdullah to accept the position of a chief executive and become part of the government. But the election have actually totally delegitimized the Ashraf Ghani's claim, because the voter turnout was so
low.
that Ashraf Ghani could only manage 12% of the total vote, and of which only 50.4% votes were
In his favor.
Were in his favor. So that has raised question marks about the legitimacy of the Afghan government and Ashraf Ghani's ability to deliver on the peace deal. But then my understanding is, if you look at the recent NATO summit that was held in Brussels, Ashraf Ghani was invited as a special guest to that NATO Brussels meeting, in which he was given details of all the agreement that has been put together, which will be announced formally on 29th of February, and he seemed to have lived with the reality that he is going to be the president, but the president's power will be substantially reduced in a future power sharing arrangement between the two sides. So maybe he is on board, and and he seems to be quite content with this role. But the real challenge is that this is an Afghanistan-led, Afghanistan-owned peace process, and Americans have kicked the can down the road that let the Afghan themselves handle all their problems, and we will be only watching, and we will be keeping our eyes on counter-terrorism and intelligence sharing aspects of this, and there is not going to be any combat role for the American troops, and that serves eminently the purpose of the Trump administration, because he is going to face elections later this year.
Now, a lot of people also believe that whatever Trump is doing at the moment, it's not that he really wants the peace to prevail in Afghanistan. Primarily, he is looking at his next election, sir. And if this is the deal, and if it works well, I think, and calling back the troops, I think that is going to give him a lot of edge in the next election against the Democrats. Do you think, sir, that is also an important part?
Actually, that was the primary force behind expediting this particular deal, and that's why this deal was to be signed on 9th of September, 2 days before that it was called off, 9/11. The prime motivation was that he wanted to enter the election year with a peace deal with Afghanistan, so that throughout this election year, the American forces,
he has something to sell then.
American forces keep coming back, and they are shown on TV that sons of soil are coming back, and veterans are given rousing welcomes, and that the entire year would have seen
people coming back.
But coming back to the
and making headlines, so that is what matters.
Coming back to the peace process, it's very good to think that it is totally Afghan-led and totally Afghan-owned. Though I would think that the Afghan people and both the parties will have to own the results, whatever results are. They will have to own them.
That's $1 million question.
That will have to own them. But while the negotiations are going on, the Taliban would look towards the Americans to guarantee what the Afghan government the other party would be saying, and the Americans would look towards Pakistan to guarantee what the Taliban would be saying. So it is not totally independent. I think they would both the parties would have to be cajoled, would have to be facilitated. I think they would be told few steps to move the entire process would have to be guided forward and not totally independent, probably, because as it is felt, the very first step, the toughest task probably for the Americans would be to make a team from the Afghan side in which the Northern Alliance is also represented, and the president also is the government is also represented, without compromising on the whatever little power the government has, because that facade of a government is very important, because that is what will give the stamp of legality.
They need to put their own house in order first, and then look out.
This is for the Americans to probably. So when we say this, it is totally Afghan-led and Afghan-owned. Yes, the Afghan-led, probably they'll have to first cobble together a team.
Afghan-led, Afghan-owned under the umbrella of the United States of America.
And probably certain backing from the regional countries as well. Probably there would be
most certainly from Pakistan. Most certainly from
assurances.
Pakistan.
assurance of Pakistan, there would be probably certain assurance from the Russians, Chinese, maybe Iran. So there probably would be a lot of help sought by all the stakeholders, and these are all stakeholders in this particular war. So it is not only that the two teams, the two delegations would be locked in a room and only allowed to come out once they have an agreement. I think there will be many fragile moments in the coming years, and one just can hope that probably the peace process will keep moving forward even beyond the American elections.
Okay. Now, sir, since we were talking about the role of the regional players, the role of the most powerful countries, Russia for that matter, China for that matter, and there was confirmed engagement with their top leaders and the Taliban factions. Now, sir, two important points. First of all, also tell me about the non-state actors like IS, for example, Daesh. There is a lot of presence. Since we have heard that the factor which was very, very dominating, that was Al-Qaeda once, it doesn't exist anymore. Maybe those people, those individuals, they have just diffused around, and maybe they have joined other splinter groups. How do you see that factor, sir? And when you talk about the regional players, the regional countries, Pakistan, Iran, India for that matter, because India has been ousted for the time being, sir. But the presence and their philosophy has a lot of value inside Afghanistan, sir, because we have seen a lot of their leaders speaking exactly the Indian language. So how do you see these 3-4 aspects, sir?
First of all, let me tell you, it is extremely, for Pakistan and for Iran, it's extremely important that, as I said, peace prevails in Afghanistan. But remember, it is also important for China and Russia. Both of them have faced these issues of terrorism emanating from Afghanistan, because instability, turmoil in Afghanistan has allowed these Chechens and Uzbeks and others, even from China, to come and take refuge in Afghanistan, and then they attack them. So for them it is extremely important that peace prevails. That is the reason that you will see that these Taliban have been visiting, apart from going to Qatar, they've been to Beijing and to Moscow, and they have been sitting with them, talking to them, and assuring them that they will not allow. I can say experience shows that Taliban will not allow any presence of IS in this country. They have been, what they have done is that IS has been used against the American troops and against foreign troops. But once the Taliban are in the saddle and, as they say, sharing power, they will not allow any other force other than Taliban to rule the country. For us, another important factor is that the American withdrawal should be gradual. If they immediately leave, then this vacuum will be there again.
And you're going to head towards a civil war again.
The problem for it's, as I said, it's problem for Pakistan. Again, Pakistan has not only been losing, its economy has taken an impact from the turmoil in Afghanistan. The other thing is our transit trade, our own exports and our own exports to Afghanistan has also taken a hit. It was used to be about $8 to $9 billion, come down to maybe only $1 billion. So, and if you look at the Afghans, they would rather do transit, do the trade through Pakistan than to go to some other country.
Because we have an existing infrastructure for that.
Yeah, and the relationship within Pakistan with the business community goes decades back.
Now, quick comment, sir, on the formation, because we've been talking about the formation, Taliban. And interestingly, if you look at different individuals or different factions, they have a very different philosophy. Do you think it is so easy to give up on that philosophy and to merge together to form a common opinion?
Looks like, I cannot say like President Trump, he may have another, better information than all of us, that there is a fatigue within Taliban of that they don't want to fight. That may be there. But I think it has, my opinion is that the Taliban may be ready to coexist and to work within Afghanistan. So that, because they have seen that the absence of Taliban from ruling the country or from instability has invited these foreign interventions. I think
well,
they
let's
had,
see,
they
sir.
had, and,
well,
they
let's
had,
see,
and they had enough of it. And let's hope that also sanity prevails on the other president, the Afghan government now. It's a divided house, that they should be able to put some united front so that they're able to again negotiate with the Taliban, the most important stakeholder in Afghanistan.
But sir, what we have witnessed during the last 17, 18, 19 years is that this is the time when the Americans have shown that they really want to go, but there has to be a peace deal, because earlier their own candidate for the presidentship and also their former secretary, Miss Hillary Clinton, said that, whatever, she said on the floor of the House that whatever we did earlier was not right. This was not the right way to do it. Let's hope sanity prevails this time. So quick last minute, sir.
But Faisal, one apprehension that I have is that there is a certain element of insincerity in the American efforts to forge this peace deal. Once the election is over, once the headlines are
Sir,
gone.
explain that. They don't want it,
No. Because there is a clause in it that, that the Americans will retain their security forces and they will continue to engage with the Afghan government on the civilian issues. So that can be a rubric which can be used by the Americans to
carry on further.
To carry on further, and especially when the elections are won or lost by Trump administration, then the Americans are under no obligation whatsoever, and that's why they are calling it an Afghan-owned and Afghan-led peace process. You would remember that during the Vietnam War, they had led to the Asianization of the Vietnam War. So this is the Afghanization of the Afghan war, and that's a convenient way of trying to tell the world that we are washing our hands off from this conflict.
One line.
When Trump came into power and when Obama left, there were 8,000 troops in USA, and when Trump completes his first term, Afghanistan, when Trump completes his term, there will be 7,000 troops.
So what's the difference?
There's not much big of a difference. So what you see is, I think we wish the talks to go ahead and probably succeed, but there's an equal importance that there's a talk about the reconstruction of the Afghan society and of the economy. I think that talk must be taken up by both the Afghan parties with the US, that what would be the fate of the Afghanistan and its economy after the US forces have withdrawn.
Who's going to pay the bill?
Yeah.
I can just tell you, if Taliban, people know Taliban, they are going to have a zero tolerance for any foreign troops in Afghanistan, I can assure you.
But sir,
not even a single soldier,
for
they will not like even a single soldier in Afghanistan.
But anyway, Ambassador, thank you so much, sir. It was a pleasure having you. Professor, thank you so much. And that's all we have for this hour. I'll see you inshallah tomorrow. Till then, you take good care of yourself. Assalamu alaikum.